toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Messenger, the Spirit of guidance. Our theme for tonight is Your Presence is Requested. So I'd like to begin with a quote from Hazrat Inayat Khan. In human beings, one finds millions of qualities. Every quality has its origin in the heredity and is, in reality, a mixture of different qualities, a kind of solution. So every person will have different qualities, unlike those of others, and every person is unique in their way. In this lies the secret of the oneness of God. Not only is God one, but the human is one also. So, why are we here? Why is there an existence at all? Well, we can look at the science side of things, and there's theories about there was one state of the vacuum that collapsed to a different state and symmetry was broken, and then there was the Big Bang. And that's perhaps a physical explanation for how our universe came to be, but we're also interested in what's the underlying purpose of existence, or is there a purpose for existence? Well, as you've heard before, the Sufis say that creation began because God was a hidden treasure desiring to be known, to love, and to be loved. And God could only know him herself through the awakening of beings in creation, in existence. So instead of thinking of the old notion of God up in the sky, knowing everything and just watching the drama play out that's where the outcome is already known, for one, that wouldn't be terribly interesting. But two, that doesn't seem to be the way that things work. There were possibilities set in motion in creation. There were possibilities set in motion in the creation of every soul, including each person listening to this class. So you might be wondering, I wonder what God had in mind when she created me. And perhaps you think, well, God had this definite blueprint plan and created your soul just so you could go with the plan. It's like somebody gives you a blueprint for a building and you get the materials and you build it just the way it's supposed to look. Well, again, that would not be terribly interesting, and it would not allow for there to be any further evolution or discovery. And if God was a hidden treasure, then that implies that God could not possibly have known what the outcome of creation was going to be. You might think that there were seeds of intention for what that might look like, and what are those seeds? Well, those seeds are the divine qualities. So imagine the divine being launching forth the seed of beauty, and the divine has no way of knowing how that beauty will manifest. And here's another seed for compassion, and here's a seed for wisdom, and here's one for truth, and here's one for light, and so on. But it's just a possibility of how that seed might blossom, how it might come into fruition, and how does that take place? It only can take place through a relationship that's established by beings in existence connecting with the source of their being, the divine, the transcendent, whatever name you want to give to it. And those seeds, those qualities are the modality. They are the ways of relationship or connection. So one way we have of connecting with the divine being is through beauty. And perhaps that's one of the most wonderful ones. In our invocation, we say the perfection of love. That's another. Harmony, beauty. But that beauty only comes to life through our relationship with whatever it is that we are experiencing. It's not something that's just sitting there in the subtle realms waiting for us to be able to perceive it. It's actually birthed through our experience of it. And this is not that different from what's been discovered in quantum physics about subatomic particles, that until there's a measurement, an observation, they really don't exist in the way that we think. The old notion was this electron is this little ball going around the nucleus of the atom. But in actuality, an electron is a probability wave that can be anywhere until you make a measurement. And then you're forcing it to appear in a way that's related to the way that you go about measuring it. But it has an existence beyond that. Okay. So then you might think, all right, so we're all here to actuate or actualize these qualities. So our collective job as beings in creation is to bring beauty to life, but we might think there's somehow this one notion of what beauty is about, and it's expressed in different ways, through nature, through poetry, through art, through music, through the smile of a child, and so on. But we might think there's just this one kind of collective pool of beauty that we're trying to bring into existence. But just like this quote that I began with, the way that beauty comes to life is unique for each person. No two people have the same way of relating to anything. So even two people looking at a beautiful flower are not going to have the same experience of that flower. Something is brought out by their way of connecting the light of their being with the light of that flower. And we've talked in other classes about a principle called Tawil, seeing beyond the surface appearance of things. Pierre Valliere would say, seeing that which transpires behind that which appears, or discovering the archetypal nature of something. But again, that is something unique for each person, and that archetypal experience is not the same for each person. It's actually brought to life by the connection of the two. And going back to the reason why there's an existence, the divine seeking to know him herself, what the divine can know through each of us is totally different. It's not the same. And something I've referred to many times in the past is perhaps my favorite thing that Ibn Arabi said, that every soul has access to a unique part of the divine wisdom that no other soul could ever have access to. Even Buddha, even Christ. Each of us has access to a part of the divine wisdom, which is not something predetermined. It's something that is birthed through our discovery, through our relationship, and it's something unknown even to what we think of as God or the divine being until we establish that way of relationship with it. So it's a revelation of something that is created, not a revelation of something that's pre-existent. And to me, that's a very important distinction. There's not this fixed body of stuff that, when we reach a state of what we might think of as enlightenment, now we've got it, and it's going to be the same for everybody. Well, it couldn't possibly be the same. And also, it's always evolving. It's changed. Everything is always in the process of updating itself. And it's updated by the way that light is circulated through all the levels of existence. Okay, so this was kind of a somewhat lengthy segue back to the question of why are we here and what is our purpose? Well, our purpose, the mystics might say, is to enable the divine to know an aspect of him or herself that can only be known through us. Our purpose is also to be an essential part of birthing new wisdom. There's not some fixed body of wisdom sitting there. It's always emergent. And to me, that's the deep meaning of what alchemy is. Alchemy is the never-ending process of the emergence of wisdom through the transformation of everything in existence in its relationship with everything else in existence. And that relationship can be in what the Sufis call the horizontal or cosmic dimension, with other people, with nature, and so on. It can be the relationship in the vertical or transcendent dimension with what we think of as the divine being, what we describe as subtle levels of reality on which we exist. But wisdom is brought forth on all of those different levels continually. But as I alluded to in the title of this class, your presence is requested. So imagine God issues RSVP to you, and what God is really wanting is for you to really be present. Well, we've had many classes on presence before, and we talked about presence is something much more than just being there. So hopefully each person listening to this is being present to the content of what's being said, and that's good. That's a level of presence. But we have many levels of our being that determine the degree to which we are truly present. We can be present to ourselves as being multidimensional beings, existing not just in this fixed point in time and space, but continuing to have an existence in the past, in the future, beyond this physical existence, in subtle levels of existence, and all of them are going on, well, we don't have good words for it, but simultaneously is the best. At the same time, they're all happening, and every aspect of our being on all of those different levels and times is having an impact on every other part of it. So it's hard for our minds to wrap around that, because the way that we're used to thinking about things is pulling back and analyzing. Even what I just said, it'd be normal for you to be thinking, oh, wow, that's an interesting idea. I could be present in the past, and I'm present in the future, and that's happening right now, and what I'm doing right now is affecting my future me and my past me. And that we have to start someplace, but we can get to a place where we can dive into that and have an experience which can't be a dualistic one, in which we're separated from the experience, because if we do that, we're not in the experience that I'm trying to describe. We're not really present. So to the extent that we are more and more present, then we foster this process that I've been describing. That's the reason we're here. So let me read some more passages from Mahabharata 9.5. Dharma has been given from time to time to the world, sometimes quietly and sometimes in a loud voice. It is a continual outpouring of the inner knowledge of life and of divine blessing. Those who stick to their old forms, closing their eyes to the inner truth, paralyze their dharma by holding on to an old form while refusing the present stream that is sent. As life is the cause of activity, so such persons lose their activity. They remain where they are. And when a person has been thus paralyzed and shut out from further spiritual progress, they cling to outer forms which are not progressing. Another way of saying this is, when we remain in our usual vantage point, which is one in which we separate ourselves from what we're experiencing, then we're not able to participate in what the Sufis call the new creation that's born at every instant. And furthermore, we're not able to participate in enabling the new possibilities that can always take place through the way that we relate to whatever we experience. We're, as Pure Light would say, we're schlepping around this old notion of ourselves, and we're trying to pretty it up. What's that saying about something about a sow? There's something about turning a sow's ear or a pig into something. Anyway, it's still going to be what it was to start with. Okay. When directed by the new spiritual inspiration, law, morals, education, and all departments of life come to new life. But if the spiritual current is lacking, there is no further progress in the forms of life. People mostly think that the spiritual message must be something concrete and definite in the way of doctrines or principles, but that is a human tendency, I love this, which does not belong to the divine nature, which is unlimited life itself. The divine message is the answer to the cry of souls, individually and collectively. The divine message is life and light. The sun does not teach anything, but in its light we learn to know all things. The sun does not cultivate the ground, nor does it sow seeds, but it helps the plant to grow, to flower, and to bear fruit. Why do souls come on earth? Why is this creation taking place? This may be answered in one word: satisfaction, for the satisfaction of God. Why is God not satisfied without it? Because God is the only being, and the desire of being is to become conscious of being. This conscious experiences life through various channels, names, and forms, and in the human, this consciousness of being reaches its culmination. In plain words, through the human, God experiences life at its highest perfection. If anyone then asks, what is the person's duty, if that be the purpose? The answer is, their most sacred duty is to attain to that perfect consciousness, which is their dharma, their true religion. Dharma, in the language of the Hindus, means religion, but the literal meaning of this word is duty. It suggests that one's relation to every person in the world is one's religion. Religion in the East is not made into a thing apart from one's life, as in the West, where business, profession, and other things on the one side of life and going to church one day and the week on the other side together constitute religion, with a prayer before going to rest. But strictly speaking, life is religion. When one has that ideal before one, with whatever occupation one is concerned, business, industry, domestic life, or whatever it is, one carries it out trying to be worthy of it. That is religion. Whatever kind of duty it is, so long as you have an ideal before you and are performing that duty, you are walking the path of religion. Okay, so one end of things is we're enabling the divine being to know something that couldn't have been known otherwise. The other question that comes to mind, well, how do we actuate this in our life? What do we do? Do we need to meditate more? That's helpful. Do we need to pray more? Yes, that may be helpful. But I would say the main thing is, like this passage I read just now refers to, it's the way we live our life. It's the way we relate to whatever it is we're doing. And in other places, Hazrat Inayat Khan would say it's the attitude that we have towards what we're doing. It's the intention we have behind what it is we're doing. And then it could be almost anything. It could be the simplest thing. It could be sweeping the floor. It could be talking to somebody. It could be whatever kind of work we have or creative modality that we are engaged in. But when we're fully present, again, that means we're bringing all the levels of ourself to that, but that also means we're connecting with a deeper part of reality, which is the deeper part of our own being, which Ibn Arabi calls our personal Lord or a personal angel. Some say it's the transcendent. You could think of it as the way that you relate to God. But when we bring all of that into the picture in the way we go about doing whatever it is that we're doing, then we are not only fulfilling our Dharma, which is unique for us. No one else can do that in the way that we do it. We're fulfilling our Dharma. We're enabling new possibilities to take place. I've talked many times before about everything is potentially a portal to the sacred. So we're opening up portals to the sacred by the way that we live our life, by the way we relate to whatever it is that we are experiencing. And it's not like we're going around just trying to zap sacredness here and there. Hazrat Nat Khan said the purpose of spirituality is to become a natural human being. So ideally, we get to the point that it's very natural for us to live this way, to be this way, but the result of that is the seeds that started creation, the unique combination of qualities that's embodied in each of our own divine inheritances. Then those seeds sprout into flowers and fruits. And furthermore, there's a light that emerges from that serves as a nurturance to other people or anything that we're in relationship with. The Sufis are always talking about a light upon a light. And just like plants need fertilizer, each person has within themselves, when they can establish this kind of connection, what's needed to really foster what's been given to them. But when there's something added to that, and that's a unique light that comes from another unique expression of the divine being, now the door has been opened to new possibilities of what can take place for that person and also for you. There's always a two-way circulation of this light. So we're always enabling you could say, the evolution of the divine being in life. Sufis talk about making God a reality, and I might add to that, that reality is not just, okay, now God's a reality, but God becomes a living and transforming reality in our life, in our world. Our world becomes transformed. And when we are connecting with other people who have achieved a similar degree of awakening, now the possibilities for that transformation are exponentially greater. And things can happen that couldn't possibly happen before. And it's very easy to get frustrated if we're working on things from one level of consciousness. We can do quite a bit. It's not that we shouldn't try from that, but when we open up richer degrees of consciousness and being, then what is possible is so much more than what was possible before. New solutions become available that we could not even have conceived of before. And when there's a group of people that share similar intentions for transformation, the power of that is just so much greater than the separate contributions of no matter how many like-minded individuals. So I jotted down some little tidbits. This is what I tend to do when I'm preparing a class. I'll just jot down a few ideas and then see about unpacking them. And so one of them is establishing a pole, P-O-L-E, for new creation and revelation to take place. We have to have this end of things to hook up with the divine end of things. And if you followed our teachings or read any of our books, we've talked about the barzakh, the interface. We have to have both of those sides together to enable this process to take place, because, as Ibn Arabi said, we are beings of bi-unity. And if we just think that we're just supposed to dissolve our human identity and let nothing but the divine be there, then the purpose of our creation is unfulfilled. And if we just try to focus on the human side without the connection with the divine, what we can do is very limited. It takes both. So we have to establish a firm pole in existence, and not just in this physical realm, in whatever realm that we are experiencing, whether it's the subtle inner realms, the jinn, the angelic realm, and so on. So there's a principle in alchemy about making something adamant. And what that means is it's not ever going to go back to what it was before. It's become fixed. And fixed doesn't mean rigid. It just means it's there. And the Sufis talk about in the alchemical process, at a certain point, we have established a whole different sense of our identity, and we don't go back to the way we were perceiving the world before. I mean, it's really gelled. So that's something very important. And in establishing that, we discover that we can't ever lose who we are. And that sounds kind of silly. Well, how could we lose who we really are? But one thing that can be very challenging and sometimes frightening when people are having mystical, deep experiences is there's temporarily a dissolution of sense of self, awareness of our physical body, and so on. And if there's just enough little bit of our usual perception left, we're going, what's happening to me? I'm not here anymore. But once we've established that adamant sense of identity, then we can be free just to let it go and know that we can't lose who we are, no matter how high in the scale of states of consciousness we get to. We never lose all the rest of who we are. So that's something very important along the spiritual journey to aim for. We need to have what we could call permeability and malleability of identity in response to the circulation of light. So what does that mean? It means we discover and realize ourselves not as this fixed, separate thing, even though it's very wonderful. We might feel light coming from another person, and we might feel, well, I'm inspired and light's going this way. But if we can feel in a state of what I've called relational unity, where there is this permeability, we don't feel these rigid boundaries, we still have this very firm sense of who we are, but there's an openness to it, and it's subject to being changed and enhanced by whatever it is that we are experiencing. And we can learn to welcome that without worrying about losing who we are. So this is something very important if we're going to be able to engage in this process of deep transformation, not only in ourselves, but to bring about this transformation of divinity and life. Each person is a hidden treasure of the divine. We said God was a hidden treasure desiring to be known, but each of you is a hidden treasure that the divine is longing to know. So that's a different slant than God's just seeking to know him or herself. God is seeking to know you because you are this marvel that contains the elements of the divine being, but the divine being is longing to discover who you are just as much as you're longing to discover what the divine is. And with that, everything is a hidden treasure of the divine. So, people, anything in nature, everything is a hidden treasure of the divine. Hosmer Khan said that every atom will have its moment of awakening. And with this, some serious physicists are saying that even subatomic particles may have some kind of rudimentary consciousness. And it's certainly not the same as people, but that's just mind-boggling. And many physicists have said, and this has been going on for many years, that more fundamental than matter or energy is consciousness. So many physicists have said consciousness may be the basis for existence and not even energy and matter. Pretty mind-boggling. Took them a while to catch up with the mystics, but okay, let me read you a few more quotes of Hosmer Khan. Then there is a third person who has imagination strengthened by faith. He or she does not only pray to God, but they pray before God and in the presence of God. Once the imagination has helped a person to bring the presence of God before them, the God in their own heart is wakened. Then before they utter a word, it is heard by God. When they're praying in a room, they're not alone, they're there with God. Then God to them is not in the highest heaven, but next to them, before them, and in them. Then heaven to them is on earth, and the earth for them is heaven. No one to them is then so living as God or so intelligible as God. Then every word of prayer they say is a living word. It not only brings them blessing, but also brings blessings to all those around them. And the person who makes God their beloved, what more do they want? Their heart becomes awakened to all the beauty there is within and without. To them all things appeal, everything unfolds itself, and it is beauty to their eyes, because God is all-pervading in all names and all forms. Therefore their beloved is never absent. Their every sense perceives the beloved, their eyes see him, their ears hear his voice. When a person arrives at this realization, they, so to speak, live in the presence of God. Then to them the different forms and beliefs, faiths and communities do not count. To them God is all in all. To them God is everywhere. If they go to the Christian church or to the synagogue, to the Buddhist temple, to the Hindu shrine, or to the mosque of the Muslim, there is God. In the wilderness, in the forest, in the crowd, everywhere they see God.
Where's that one from?
This is all Hosmer Khan.
I mean, where?
I'd have to look it up.
Okay, it's really good. Can we stop?
The human.
How about we
okay,
let people talk?
Later. The human is their own teacher. In them is the secret of their being. We're going to do a meditation, and then we'll have a time of sharing. Just as the religious person has a religious attitude in a temple, so the Sufi has that attitude before every being. For to them, every being is the temple of the divine. Therefore, the Sufi is always before their Lord. And one more, and then we're going to do a meditation. Our pursuit is to find the God within ourselves. Therefore, it is necessary for every initiate to understand that our soul's aim in our esoteric studies and practices is to become acquainted with the life which is living as a running current through the circle of eternity. So we will have a time of sharing in just a bit, but I'd like for us to just have a time of meditation for a while. And during this time, allow yourself to open to what God is discovering in you. And the ways that God is able to discover through you by what transpires in your life. And may the message of God reach far and wide illuminating and making the whole of humanity as one single family, the parenthood of God. Amen.